Hey gang, what's up? Welcome back to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys checking today's video out. And guys, today we're going to be talking about rigging a Texas rig worm, and this is not a basic 101 type of a video here. There's actually about 10 aspects of rigging a Texas rig worm that I think most anglers they're not aware of how important it is to have these elements involved in it. So what I'm going to do today, guys, is I'm going to go through every aspect. I'm going to show you the knot to use, hook, weight, how to set it up, how to rig it, everything like that, because there's more to it than what most people think. And once you learn how to do it like the way that I'm going to show you, it definitely adds up to a lot more, not only strikes, but adds up to more fish in the boat for you guys. Before we get started, guys, one quick housekeeping tip. Just wanted to remind everybody about our shopping feature on the YouTube channel, guys. You'll see at the bottom of the screen on the video, you'll see like it says view products, or you'll see a line of products down there. And those are products that YouTube allows us to put up on our videos. And if you guys click on one of those and purchase it, we get a small percentage of that commission. It's a good way to help the channel out. So much appreciated. Okay, guys, I'm going to show you from start to finish how to do this. And if you get all of these steps, congratulations, because there's very few people that go through this. So we're going to talk about everything in detail here. So first of all, let's talk about the line. Guys, what you want to use when you're using a Texas rig worm is fluorocarbon line. You know, I'm using all the time the Seaguar and Vizex fluorocarbon. I think that's the best line for Texas rig worming. Line tests vary anywhere between, 10-pound test up to 25, depending upon what you're doing with your worm, if you're pitching or flipping it or fishing open water or different type of cover. So there's a lot of different line tests. So the next thing you have to do, excuse me, is you have to tie the proper knot on a Texas rig worm. Now the proper knot, and I'm going to show you guys how to tie it, is a double uni knot. And the reason I say that, there's basically two knots that I tie, a double uni knot and a Palomar knot. The Palomar knot is good for like baits you're reeling through the water column, like a spinner bait and a crankbait. But the double uni knot is the knot you want to use on baits that you reel down and set the hook on, because the way that the knot lays on the hook, you don't break off on the hook set. I learned this the hard way. And what I'm going to show you here is what Aaron Martins, taught me many years ago, because I was breaking some fish off and Aaron asked me about the knot, told me about the double uni, and I haven't had any problem since then. And also, I want to say, when I show you guys this double uni knot, I've showed it before. People go, no, that's not a double uni knot. That's this or that knot. Guys, this is what Aaron Martins called the double uni knot. I'm going to show you. So if you guys think you know more than Aaron Martins about knots, good for you. But this is what Aaron showed me. So first of all, let's put our slip sinker on. And slip sinker size varies, depending what you're trying to get out of your worm. There's a lot of different variables to that. In fact, we could do a whole video on slip sinker size, and is in terms of how slow or fast it makes the worm fall. But the slip sinker size, what it does as far as on different worms, it depends on the style of the worm. Because if you're throwing a worm like this Zoom Ultravibe worm, a tail like that's going to slow the worm down. That's going to create more drag than if you use like a straight tail worm. So the worm style is going to have, excuse me, is going to have a lot to do with your slip sinker size as far as your weight or sinker. Dang allergies, man. We got the bad ragweed right now. So my favorite, guys, for a Texas rig, if you gave me one size, it would be like a 3/16. I just really like the way a 3/16, feels through the water with the worm, and that's my favorite size, which is this. So, okay, come through the worm here. And another thing about the worm color, guys, is the sinker on them, I've come to realize that I don't know if the sinker makes that much difference as far as the color, other than you don't want like a bright metallic finish on them. I've caught brown. The only two colors I use are brown and black on them. So it's just whatever you got confidence is. But if you gave me one, I've caught more fish on, even if I'm using like a green pumpkin worm, I can still get away throwing a black sinker on it. So I do use black most of the time. So got my sinker on. The next thing I'm going to do is the hook here. I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk about the hook in a second, but I'm going to show you the knot, the double uni knot. I'm going to go through this slow so you can see it. And I've actually done videos on this before in case you haven't seen it. But you want to come through the hook eye twice. Oh, and first of all, guys, you gotta, in order to tie the double uni knot, you gotta have some weight on it. So go ahead and just put your worm on, just hook it through like that, just to give it some weight. So we're gonna get the line through there twice. One thing that I'll tell you about knots, guys, is when you're learning to tie your knot, try to use your mouth, because your mouth and your tongue, once you get good with your mouth and your tongue on a knot, you can tie it a lot quicker when you do that. So the double uni knot is this. You come through like this, you got, just your line's been run through twice through your hook on that. And then you've got your left finger pinching, the main part of the line and the end of the line together. And then this other loop here you've got in the other. So what you want to do is you want to run it up like that. You want to grab both pieces. So I've got both pieces of line pinched together. And then the next thing you do, I'm going to wrap it around like, 3 or 4 times. I got my line. I just got a spool of it here. I don't got it set up like it would on the water. Okay, we're going to wrap it 3 or 4 times if I can get this thing in down here. One. 2, 3. Okay, now I've got it 3 times, and at the end there, once you wrap it, you see the 2 little loops right there? You want to take this and you come right through both of those loops, just like that. So now the loop has came through the other loop, and I'm going to take that in my mouth, and I'm going to pull the loose end. So this is the way the knot looks, and then you've got 3 tag ends. I'm going to take the loose tag end, and I'm going to pull it tight like that, and then I'm going to take the main line and pull it tight like that. So that's the way that looks. I'm going to clip it off, go back through there. You may have to practice that a little bit. Once you practice this knot, maybe 15 minutes or so, you'll have it down. So that's the way my knot looks. And the double uni knot, guys, it's a little bit larger knot, but it's okay since you're going to be burying it in the worm there. Okay, so I got my sinker on there, got my knot tied. And don't discount the importance of that double uni. It's really the best knot to be used with it. Next thing I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to actually rig my worm before I peg it. There's 2 different ways on this. Now, we've talked a little bit about how to rig a worm, and I'll show you what you do and what you don't want to do. First of all, I'd highly recommend using a straight shank hook. A lot of people use an EWG hook simply because it's easier to get the bait straight and it's easier to rig it. But as far as hookups go, if you go to a straight shank hook like this Gamakatsu G-Finesse worm hook here, you simply land more fish. It's a better hook for hooking the fish than an EWG hook. It just hooks them better. And this is something that I've experimented forever with. And I wish it was the other way around, because an EWG hook or an offset worm hook is a lot easier. Let me grab you on here. I'll show you. It's a lot easier to rig. It's a lot more user-friendly. So this would be it right here. This is what most people use, guys, and this is not what you want to use. You're going to reduce the amount of fish you land by probably, I'm going to guess, 15 to 20% overall in the course of a year. So go to a straight shank hook there. Next thing you want to do, come all the way through with it. Make sure you bury the knot, because there's 2 things. The knot will keep the worm in place, and also your keeper will keep it in place. The next thing you want to do, guys, is do not just put this hook back in the middle of the worm. That right there is the worst way you can hook a worm, because you haven't came through any plastic. It's almost like you put an impenetrable weed guard on it if you do that. And you don't even want to come through all the way with it. A lot of people expose it like that, but you don't even want to do that, simply because you still got a tremendous amount of plastic there. You're going to have to penetrate all the way through to get that fish hooked. What you want to do, and we've talked about this before, is you want to skin hook it. So I'm going to take it and I'm just going to barely skin hook it in the side of the worm. Just like that. It's just barely, the point and a little bit of the barb is in there. The worm is still perfectly straight with that. And the thing that happens with this is when you get that bite, that hook it'll just separate away from that worm, and you're gonna land so many more fish by doing that. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about pegging the worm here. Now, if I'm fishing a worm like in open water, for example, like casting points or something like that, most of the time I won't peg it. I'll leave it like this. But if there's any cover that I'm coming through, say I'm pitching a worm into cover around boat docks, or maybe I'm fishing brush piles and I want that worm to stay intact, I want to peg it. And guys, this is the best pegging system, just an old round toothpick. You've got all these, bobber stoppers and these rubber pegs and, stuff like this. I think I got one here. This is what most people use right here, these bobber stoppers. Guys, you don't want to use these things. These things are terrible to use, and I'll explain why. And also, these rubber peggets are no good to use, and I'll explain why. First of all, let's talk about the rubber pegget. If you use a rubber pegget where you peg the worm, it's just almost like a toothpick. This rubber pegget will come out. It's like there's something about it that it doesn't seat tight enough that when the fish jumps and throws your bait a lot of times, or shakes your worm, this thing's gonna come out. And if I use one of the rubber peggets, I'll have to replace them 5 or 6 times a day. And then also with the bobber stopper, the bobber stopper is no good because it pegs the sinker too tight to the worm. And you don't want the sinker pegged super tight to the worm. You want it to be able to move a little bit. You want tension on it where it doesn't separate on its own, but you don't want it locked down so tight that it doesn't move, because when that fish comes up and hits that bait, you want to try to get this weight out of the fish's mouth. So if it's loose enough where it'll move a little bit, a lot of times that weight comes out of the mouth, you have nothing but the worm in the fish's mouth, and it hooks the fish better. So the old round toothpick, the reason it's so good is you can control the tension. Let's say, for example, I don't want much tension at all. I can barely put this thing in there and break it off, or if I need it tighter, say if I'm pitching flooded bushes and I need it tighter, I can push it in there a little bit more. But I'll push it in there, simply break it off like that, and then allows me to, it stays in there. It doesn't come off like the pegget does. It stays right in there, and I can adjust the tension just perfectly with that. So that's the correct way to set up a plastic worm there. So anyway, guys, you can see there's probably 8 or 9 steps there. I think a lot of people overlook, but I have spent decades fishing a plastic worm. I've been fishing a plastic worm, guys, since the mid 1970s, and I've experimented with every different type of way you can rig them. I've experimented with colors, with hooks, with weights, with pegging systems, with knots, everything like that. And the way that I just showed you is the accumulation of 50 years of Texas rigging that has definitely works better for me. So hope it helps out. We'll talk later.